Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Zeeshan Noor. I'm a research manager for Muslim Philanthropy Initiative at Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. And I'm thankful to Dr. Ilham Nasir and Alex for their time and effort and for giving me this opportunity to present my research. So as you can read the title, Decoding Relationship Between Collectivistic and Individualistic Orientations with Positive Psychology, Religiosity, and Socioeconomic Demographics Among Muslims, a survey-based global study. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to draw a relationship. I'm trying to basically trying to see if there is a relationship between the collectivistic or individualistic orientation of a person, mainly Muslims, and if they have a correlation with positive psychology, some factors of positive psychology, religiosity, and socioeconomic demographics. And I'm calling it among Muslims because I will be using the Muslim sample population. I will be explaining that later. So before I move on, I would try to give a quick background, an overview of Muslims and Islam. So Islam is the second largest religion in the world besides Christianity. And the total estimated Muslim population in the world is around 1.6 to 1.5 billion. And Islam happens to be the fastest growing religion. And with this trend, so it is expected that Islam will take over as the first most populous religion on this planet in hopefully in the next 20, 30 years, like by 2050. There are two major Islamic denominations. So majorly it's Sunni Islam, 85 to 90%, and Shia Islam, 10 to 15%. And there are other school of thoughts and within these two denominations and other Muslims that identify with either Sunni Islam or Shia Islam or not. And with the combined Muslim population all over the world, Muslim make up a majority of population in 49 countries. And if you can see in the right side, so the most populous countries, top four most popular countries happens to be in Asia, primarily South Asia, Indonesia, Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. So basically, what is collectivistic in orientation and what is individualistic orientation? As apparent from these terms, that collective means that more like teamwork, individualistic is more like personal, like somebody doing things on their own. But just to clarify that we should not make an assumption that collective orientation is good or individualistic orientation is not good, or vice versa, because sometimes individualism in some scenarios is better and sometimes teamwork or collectivism is better. So positive fire, there are several factors that are considered as positive psychology, but I'm taking into consideration these three major factors, which is empathy, gratitude, and forgiveness. So empathy is simply basically feeling somebody else's pain and like taking actions according, making an effort in order to relieve the pain of the other person in a way. Gratitude is basically the feeling of thankfulness and being thankful to people, being thankful to nature, being thankful to God for anything positive happening, or even if it is not something positive is not happening. Forgiveness simply is basically it's an act, it's a personal act of kindness that you let go of. You forgive somebody when you believe or when you think that you are on the right side of the spectrum, but you just let it go. So that is forgiveness. And so past research shows that these three psychology factors are interrelated: empathy, gratitude, and forgiveness. That makes perfect sense. Religiosity is basically uh, that somebody identify with a religion, any religion, Islam, Christianity, Catholic, or let's say Hinduism. And the level of religiosity is usually measured by the level of practice and belief. So somebody is more practicing, more with somebody with a stronger belief, we would consider that, okay, the person has a higher level of religiosity and vice versa. And religiosity is basically very much connected with positive psychology and a lot of other factors. So basically what I'm trying to do is, as I mentioned earlier, that I'm trying to draw a relationship, and I want to basically not draw, like I want to see if there is a relationship between collective individualistic, collective or individualistic orientations, and how does it impact on their positive psychology. So to answer, so I have four major research questions, and to answer these research questions, we have to like come up with assumptions, which is basically called hypothesis building. So the first question, you can see individualistic and collective orientation and its impact on positive psychology. So how does empathy, gratitude, and forgiveness correlate with collective or individualistic orientation? Second question is that how does religiosity influence individualistic and collective orientations and positive psychology? So basically, religiosity becomes a variable and it correlates with personal orientations, and it correlates with empathy, forgiveness, and gratitude. The third question is that what is the role of socioeconomic demographics in defining a person's individualistic or collective orientation and their positive psychology in terms of empathy, forgiveness, and gratitude. The fourth and last question is basically that if so I was interested in something trying to see that if Muslim majority countries, there are Muslim majority countries and there are Muslim minority countries in the sample, that if their orientation or if their positive psychology differ based on their uh, geographic location. So, for example, if I belong to Indonesia, do I have same level, same behavior of orientation? And if I'm part of, let's say, a United States, which is just 1.1 Muslim US American Muslim population, so do I differ in terms of personal orientation and my level of positives like empathy, forgiveness, and gratitude? So in this scenario, the terms independent variable becomes collective and individualistic orientation. Dependent variables become empathy, gratitude, and forgiveness. Socioeconomic demographics, I'm considering age, education, and gender. And geographic location, I have divided the countries into two subsets: Muslim majority countries and Muslim minority countries. And then religiosity, spirituality. So the data for this study comes from a survey-based study from which is called Advancing Education in Muslim Societies, mapping the train 2019-2020 study. This study and the data is publicly available on this link. And there are very well-defined scales. And yeah, moving on forward. So this becomes my model that I'm not only trying to draw relationships between the variables, but I'm also trying to draw relationships in between independent variables. So collective individualistic orientation, obviously, all four sets of these independent variables, but at the same time, I'm trying to see that how does socio-economic demographics, how do they impact in terms of positive psychology, and what is the role of spirituality in socioeconomic demographics and positive psychology, and vice versa. So I have conducted three different sets of statistical analyses: multivariate regression analysis, ANOVA, and independent t-test. So independent t-test were needed for mainly geographic location and gender, and ANOVA was mainly needed for age and education. And rest all is basically regression analysis. So I will not spend time on this explaining the actual study because of the sake of time. So there were 15 countries, 7 and 8 like minority and majority countries. The biggest subset of population was Muslim population, Muslim respondents, which is 1580. That is my 100% sample size. So I will not go into details about the tables and the, but just to give you a glimpse of the graph outputs, regression outputs, and the scatter plots. This is the regression with empathy. This is the regression with gratitude and forgiveness. This is the regression for religiosity while considering it as an independent variable. And these are some t-test and ANOVA results while considering the relations between them, and then collective and with the dependent variables, collective and individualistic orientations. So I will jump onto the findings and I will try to explain it in the simplest possible words. So people with individualistic orientation are more empathetic and more grateful. However, uh, their level of gratitude is not really defined by this personality orientation. In terms of religiosity, it is significantly affiliated, significantly associated with collective individualistic orientation, but you cannot really make a distinction that, okay, more religious people are more collective or more or less religious are um, less individualistic or vice versa. So, and then the more religious people were found to be more empathetic and grateful, which is obviously that makes sense. This is what religion and Islam teaches. And however, the level of religiosity does not really predict the outcome of forgiveness, the variable of forgiveness. Socioeconomic demographics, older people are more individualistic, significantly more empathetic and grateful, and moderately forgiving compared to younger people. Gender, women are comparatively more collective oriented compared to their male counterparts, and they are more empathetic and grateful, while men tend to be more forgiving. This is something interesting, and maybe a full-fledged research in terms of gender can be carried out in the future. Education level, so lower education level people are more empathetic, forgiving, and grateful, and at the same time they are more individualistic in terms of personality. So based on these uh, findings, so nearly all these hypotheses are supported, besides hypothesis H4B and hypothesis H8A, which is supported but partially. And with this, I would like to conclude my presentation and would be happy to discuss more after the presentation. And this is my email address. Please feel free to reach out, and I would be happy to share my findings with you in detail and hold a conversation. Thank you very much.